Welcome to the Prospective Doctor podcast, brought to you by Med School Coach. Pre-med and medical students alike are encouraged to tune in each week for tips on how to become a strong med school candidate, gain acceptance into the school of your dreams, and succeed on your journey toward residency and becoming a doctor.
Hello, everyone. I'm super excited to have our guest for this week, Dr. Barbara Hamilton, here with me on the Prospective Doctors. So before we get into an introduction, I'll ask you guys to click that subscribe button. And now I'll throw it over to Dr. Hamilton to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, Urquita, thank you so much for having me. So I'm an IR who's originally an East Coaster like yourself. And after residency, I moved across the country to do a fellowship, and I haven't left since I was at UCLA for fellowship. So now we are in Palm Springs, which is a little resort town outside of Los Angeles, a couple hours outside. I'm a wife and a mother. I have a little 3-year-old boy. And more recently, I'm a blogger and an author. So it's been a great ride so far in my career. And I felt compelled to share that with other would-be physicians, people who would follow a similar path and who wanted to work with their hands, but maybe didn't see anybody who looked like them doing that.
That's awesome. And I'm sure we're going to dive all the way into that. But let's start way back when and ask you to tell us about your journey to interventional radiology.
Yeah, like probably a lot of people listening, I thought biology was sort of easy in school. And I thought I might be a PA because I started just volunteering at my local emergency room. And I saw a female PA who kind of looked like me. She had dark curly hair. And I thought, oh, that's what I'm supposed to do. It's just so funny. And I think it's just kind of primal the way we really look for people who look like us to see what we can be. And yeah, so by the time I got to college, I saw other pre-meds around me and I figured I'd give it a go. So I actually had the opportunity to apply for a BSMD or a BAMD program, which was a phenomenal opportunity. That was with Robert Wood Johnson as part of the University of Medicine and Dentistry in New Jersey. And then I was introduced, fortunately, to radiology during a second-year pathophysiology lecture. So one of the radiologists who was actually a leader in the department, and she was also a mother of 4, and she taught us how to read a chest x-ray. And so I was hooked. I took a dedicated elective. And then once I realized what interventional radiologist did, I was completely sold.
That's awesome. And we have yet another connection besides being East Coasters. I also did a combined program. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. So for all of the listeners out there, it'd be awesome to look into those programs because they can be really helpful. I did mine at Boston University.
Oh, amazing. So mine was able to save a year of tuition because you basically took the first year of medical school split up in your junior and senior years of college. So some of your classes would double count. They would count toward your graduation credits and toward your early medical school credits. So that was amazing. I mean, and of course, you just graduate a year earlier. They were looking for well-rounded people and they encouraged you to do other things with that time. So you didn't have to do it in 7 years. You could take that extra time. It kind of took you out of the rat race.
Yeah, that's awesome. Unfortunately, mine didn't save that extra year, but there were other benefits, but that would have been helpful. And for all of the students that are out there, it may be a good idea to try to apply to some of those if you're still in that level of applications.
Yeah, I think they're worth checking out. And like you said, they all have different benefits. They're all a little bit different.
Yeah. Now you mentioned and you told us about your journey into IR. And as some of you may not know, interventional radiology is a very male-dominated field with only 8% of doctors being female. What has it been like in your experience to be a woman in such a male-dominated field?
Exactly. IR is extremely male-dominated. And so as part of writing my book, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but about a third of practicing physicians are women when you look at all across all medical specialties, according to the AAMC data from 2017. And IR is less than 10% female. So there are benefits and there are definite drawbacks to that fact. And that's why I just found I needed to start writing about this. And so I write about a lot of the benefits and the drawbacks on my blog, and just, some of the pitfalls that people might fall into. Like they may not see somebody who looks like them when they get on the wards and they are interested in a field, but they just might not identify, or it might strike them that, oh, I'm the only woman here, I'm the only minority here. I mean, unfortunately, it's not a diverse field either. And some people don't realize that. They think, oh, there's a lot of Indian men and there's some Asian men, so it's diverse. That's not diversity. It's 2% African American. And it's too low. I mean, we don't reflect the populations that we serve. And so anyway, specifically, some of the things I talk about on my blog are, you can feel like the odd woman out. You can feel like you're dealing with kind of a boys' club mentality sometimes, or an atmosphere that doesn't feel inclusive. Sometimes women can be underestimated, but that can happen to women anywhere. And so perhaps that can be exaggerated in a male-dominated field. And then imposter syndrome. I mean, if you look around and you're the only woman who's a physician in the department, you might wonder, like, am I good enough? Do I belong here? Should I be in this role? So I talk about all those things on my blog. One of the benefits that I also like to talk about is, you get to stand out. So although this is not a diverse field right now, if you dare to venture in because you're interested, and it's these fields are amazing where you get to work with your hands, find the patient's problem, do something about it right away. They're just so gratifying. If you dare to venture in, I mean, you can stand out just by being different.
That's good advice. And I want to dive a little bit more into some of the topics that you said. But before we do that, for the listeners out there, can you let them know what the name of your blog is?
Yeah, we should mention that. Okay. It's called tiredsuperheroine.com. And the reason I named it that is because tired, to me, I started the blog when I was about 2 years into motherhood. I was, one day I'd be waking up for a trauma. The next day I'd be waking up for my little boy in the middle of the night. And both are extremely gratifying. Like, they both fill my life up, and they're both a tired that feels worth it to me. So I just wanted to share that. And that's why it's Tired Superheroine. Superheroine, because sometimes you get to save a life. So
absolutely.
Pretty awesome.
And to think of even starting that when you were a new mother is superheroine enough. So
right, just moms. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just a mom rescuing their toddler from a boo-boo. Yeah. I mean, that's heroic enough. Yes. But women can do so many different things.
Absolutely.
At Med School Coach, we know that getting into medical school is hard. In fact, 60% of pre-meds who apply to medical school don't even get accepted. And if you want to get accepted into a top medical school, it's even harder. It's a complicated process, and even students with great grades and MCAT scores get left out. That's why more students than ever are turning to Med School Coach for admissions advising. Our advisors are all physicians and former admissions committee members, so they know exactly what medical schools are looking for. One-on-one admissions advising from Med School Coach makes all the difference. Our expert team will help you develop a game plan, prepare your application, edit your essays, and coach you for interviews. Every pre-med has a story, and we'll help you tell it so you can stand out from the crowd. Visit us online at medschoolcoach.com and use offer code PODCAST10 to save 10% up to $400 on a Med School Coach admissions advising package. You can achieve your medical school dreams, and Med School Coach can help.
And you mentioned a little bit of some of your topics being about like imposter syndrome and searching for some other people who you can identify with. What advice do you give to young women in the field who may be in a male-dominated field and seeking mentorship? How should they go about finding someone who can help advise them and help them think through their career paths?
I think some of the best advice I ever got was in a lecture, so it wasn't one-on-one or anything, was the concept of having a panel of mentors. And I thought, oh, that's so great, because you don't want to be just restricted to one person or use all your energy or spend all that time with one person. You can garner different pieces of advice and different value from different people who have different walks in medicine. And I mean, specifically related to what I like to talk about, you may not always have somebody who looks like you. Mm-hmm. So a lot of women in my field will talk about all the phenomenal male mentors they had, and they are incredibly important too. So, that's has its own challenges. I mean, sometimes people don't understand, like, oh, you're meeting one-on-one, a male and female, people think the wrong thing, or, there are barriers to that relationship sometimes. And it's sad, but it's still true in 2020. So, whether your mentors are male or female or combination thereof. And I strove to basically add an option for people. When I was growing up in medicine, I was in Rhode Island. I didn't have a female IR in my state. Mm-hmm. Like the next one was another state away. And, this is, so, be that as it was, they were kind of like this mythical creature. Mm-hmm. Like my attendings told me that they existed in other states, but we were geographically scattered and I was not able to interface with them. Mm. And so through my blog and through just my speaking and putting my story out there, I hope to be like a virtual role model. And I've been able to connect with some great people through the interwebs, like on social media and just people reacting to the blog. It's been a blessing.
I love everything you said. For the listeners out there, they may be tired of me saying this because maybe it should be our catchphrase. I don't know, for our podcast, because for the many of the recent guests, you basically describe what you learned in that lecture by what I like to call developing your personal board of directors. So yes. You have different people for different reasons. And with that, like you said, sometimes you may be in an isolated environment where you're the only person in your state. And we are fortunate enough to have technology where all of you guests on this show are actually a part of our students' personal board, even though they may not know you directly, or they may be able to, and we'll talk about this soon, read your book and learn things, or read your blog, or go to different social media sites where before in medical education, it was a little frowned upon. And even now, sometimes with the articles out there about if it's appropriate to post certain things, but people are leveraging social media and things like Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram to learn from one another and to make these connections and network. And it's becoming very important, especially now where we cannot network as much in person given the pandemic, but utilizing those resources to learn what you would like to learn and gather from different people. And that's very important.
It's an incredible time to be alive. And, I wasn't a student that long ago, and I graduated in 2008. And I just, with the pace at which things are changing, things are so different for you now.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So hopefully I can be an early adopter and just offer myself, at times writing a blog feels like oversharing. It's like, why am I telling people about my mistakes and, all my failures? I have actually, if the listeners would like to hear like a list of some of my greatest failures.
Absolutely. That makes it juicy.
It's so juicy. And at the time it's flavored with so much pain, but I have an offering on my website, which is you can sign up for free and just put in your email address and I'll send you a link to this recording, which is very heartfelt for me. It's just like some of my greatest failures basically and what I learned from them. And I just feel like now looking back as a physician leader, like the time that I was passed over, like probably not even considered for chief resident, all these times where I was like, I see my friends on Instagram go through it now, but now I get the benefit of looking back a few years down the road, and I'm chief of my interventional section. I'm becoming chairman of my radiology department, which is just crazy.
Absolutely. Congratulations.
Thank you. Because I'm not that far into my career, but I mean, so even if you don't see yourself as a leader, that's another thing I like to talk about is leadership development for people who are like the unlikely leader.
That's awesome. And like you said, like you're learning from these experiences. And although you may have had some quote unquote failures, you're kind of like failing up and learning from them. And that way you can go and present yourself even better and bigger and do great things. So just because you may not necessarily make chief resident or something like that, that doesn't mean that you won't succeed and thrive in the future. So that's awesome.
Completely. A lot of people are talking about that right now. So I love to read about it and listen about it and put my spin on it as a woman in a male-dominated field.
Yeah. Now we've been leading up to it, but I'm really interested in hearing about this book that you published. It's your first book. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, thank you so much. So my book, I just released in October. It's basically a user's guide for women who are navigating the career choice in medicine. So those who are deciding where they're going to go in the beginning of their career, and especially if you're considering a surgically oriented or a traditionally male-dominated field. So if you're considering like gastroenterology or critical care or emergency medicine or interventional radiology or neurosurgery, like all of these careers, I think have a lot in common. And we are all in our different silos, but I've noticed that by talking to my female colleagues late at night in the hallways or, like over text message, we have a lot of the same stories. And so I strived to share some of those in the book. So I have some of my colleagues who contributed to the book as well. So it's not just my voice, but you'll definitely hear a lot of my stories. So the book is like a user's guide. It goes into, first of all, how to find your people in medicine, even if you don't feel like these are your people right away. It's how to figure that out. Basically, they're the people that you can get nerdy with.
I love it.
So like, oh, you think this slippery wire is cool and this other wire is safer and you could put this anywhere and it won't perforate a vessel. I mean, it's basically like the biotechnical aspect of my field. There's some technical components to it, which are intimidating at first, but it's just, if you got into medical school, you can certainly figure it out. And even if other people around you don't seem intimidated, they might be intimidated too. So I just want to demystify all of that. I mean, because I think there are too many talented women who are super interested in these fields, but they may discount themselves just for the wrong reasons.
That's super interesting. Now so the book is called Save Lives, Enjoy Your Own, Finding Your Place in Medicine. Where can people find this book?
Yeah, so I'm still signing copies of them and writing an inspirational little message if you want to buy it off my website. So they can get it at tiredsuperheroine.com, and it's also on Amazon. So if you don't need me to touch it, no harm done. You can find it there as well. And if you want it faster, you'll get it in a couple days. So
that's awesome. Amazon is for everything, but you're probably going to be a Tired Superheroine anyway, looking at the blog. So you may as well get a signed copy when you can.
Yeah. And I have free resources there too. Like we talked about that audio. So yeah.
That's awesome. You have so much information about leadership and being a woman in medicine and being a leader in your field. What do you think makes a good, successful medical student? And what kinds of things can you recommend that they start early to help develop their leadership skills?
Yeah, it's never too early to think about your leadership potential. And you don't need to be the overachiever. You don't have to be the class president. Just don't count yourself out. That would be my main message about leadership at your stage if you're listening and you're a pre-med or a medical student. But getting involved is always a gateway to leadership. So if you just get involved and learn about processes and then start to work to improve them, like that will naturally happen. And you'll become a leader and you might not even realize it's happening.
Absolutely. And even in small ways, I think that regardless of if you have a title, just being a physician, you're a natural leader anyway. You're going to lead teams. You're going to, as you become a senior medical student, you'll be helping develop the third years. And as you become a resident, you'll be working with the interns. So you're always going to be growing in leadership. And even after you leave your training, you'll be leading nurses and other aspects of the team. So something good to learn how to master and continue to learn, because we all are in a growth process.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And during medical school, you'll learn some of it organically as you deal with these different members of the healthcare team. But once you have some extra time, you can start to learn a bit about leadership. A lot of the leadership books are written in the business sphere, but it's good to break outside of medicine and learn something else at times, or take a break from what you're studying. So yeah, I try on my blog to kind of translate and make it practical for people in medicine, just to share what I've learned in my early career.
At Med School Coach, we know that studying for the MCAT exam can be challenging, especially for busy students on the go. That's why our team created MCAT Prep, the only all-encompassing study app built specifically for the MCAT. MCAT Prep by Med School Coach provides student access to extremely high-quality content and a personalized curriculum for free. The app has more than 250 videos, 1,000 flashcards, and 1,000 unique MCAT questions. Plus, MCAT Prep by Med School Coach allows students to create a personalized study schedule and track progress over time. You need every competitive advantage you can get to get into medical school, and now you can put the experts from Med School Coach into your pocket. It's the closest pre-med students can come to a personal tutor without spending a penny. Download MCAT Prep by Med School Coach for free at medschoolcoach.com/MCAT. Or download it directly from the Apple Store or Google Play Store. You can achieve your medical school dreams, and MCAT Prep by Med School Coach can help.
That's awesome. I think that you've shared so many wonderful things with us today. For my final question, I want to ask you a two-tiered question. What is one of the best lessons that you've learned that sticks out to you about medical training? For question number one, in terms of being a pre-med student transitioning to a medical student, and then the second tier is a medical student.
Well, I had a little time to think about this. I think it's volunteerism, and I think that applies to both. So this is something that also I think you learn a bit organically, but it's kind of built into our culture. So you're immersed in this setting where basically the best students and trainees are always looking for ways that they can support others on the team. And I know that sounds like a lot. I mean, if you're listening and you're a medical student, it's like, oh my God, I have to learn everything and I have to wonder what everybody else needs. I mean, it's a lot. But that's why I say the best. And like, once you master, do everything you need to do, take care of yourself as well. This is not about martyrdom, but if you can think that next step, that's when you're really going to shine, is when you can think about what your team needs and just volunteer to do that next thing, because it's always going to be appreciated. And it just in my experience, I found that this is something really unique to medicine. It's part of our work ethic. It's part of our culture. And it's something I think all of us physicians should be really proud of. So you're going to be totally acculturated to that.
That makes complete sense. I really appreciate you joining us today, and we had such a great conversation. I'm sure, I don't know, you seem to have a journalism itch, so maybe when you come out with book number 2, you can come back and tell us about that. For everyone else that's listening, you can go on her website or go on Amazon and pick up the book. Definitely check out the blog, and I'll give you an opportunity to say goodbye to everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening. Best of luck on your journey. If you know anybody who needs a hand to hold as they decide on a male-dominated field, please let them know about this book. It's called Save Lives, Enjoy Your Own, Finding Your Place in Medicine. Don't be a martyr. You can save lives and still enjoy your own. And this book is also for the guys. I mean, you guys need to also know what your female colleagues are going through. And I tried to make this book as intersectional as possible. I mean, I am not a minority. Women are a minority in my field, but I'm not of a minority background. So this definitely applies, to minorities, to LGBTQ identity. I mean, I'm speaking to all of you in this book because you're going to get there and you might just feel like a fish out of water sometimes. And so I just want you to know that I've been there and it'll be okay.
Thank you so much. And for everyone that's listening, I'll be back with you guys next week. Talk to you soon.
Each episode of the Prospective Doctor podcast is brought to you by Med School Coach. To access articles, videos, webinars, and free tools to help you succeed on your journey toward med school and beyond, visit our website, prospectivedoctor.com. We hope you tune in again next time.